Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
I'll just start. I'm Justin.
Scott.
Jim.
Joe. Mario.
Roger.
Michael.
Cal.
Jack.
Paul.
Kay.
Doug.
Mark. Jim. Mike.
Joe.
Eric.
Kim. Barb.
Howard.
Andrew.
Jim.
Snake.
Christy.
Todd. Robert. Peter. Robin.
Robert.
David. Okay. Is there anybody here for the first time? If you could just raise your hands. Okay. Well, a special welcome to you. Do we have a host for today? That's David. So David is our host for today, and I'm the facilitator. We'll be available after the talk. We'll be happy to answer any questions for any of you who are here for the first time. A special welcome. So what I'd like to do now is introduce or put out our speaker, who is Losang Monlam, and allow him to introduce ourselves and to also say welcome to you.
Good morning. My name is Losang Monlam. It's a recent name change. In fact, you may have noticed it's in the program I was actually listed as place hence. I first met Buddhism in India about 15 years ago, and the moment I met it, I knew I was Buddhist right away. And I started practicing and reading texts and stuff in various traditions. Dabbled a little bit with Zen. It was probably the most accessible at the beginning. And spent some time studying Theravada. And in about 1992, I decided that within my own practice, I needed to focus in on one tradition. So I chose Tibetan Buddhism. It was kind of the tradition that was there. All the traditions have their benefits. They're all leading and helping us along the path. But since that time, I've developed my practice more. I became the spiritual program coordinator at Tse Chen Ling Center here in San Francisco. It's one of over 100 centers within the FPMT, Foundation for the Preservation of the Mahayana Tradition, which is a mouthful. It's this organization that was started by Lama Thupten Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who are our teachers. Lama Thupten Yeshe passed away in 1984 here in California. Let's see, what else? Spiritual program coordinator. Many of you might have had the benefit of hearing Venerable Robina talk before. She's one of my teachers, and hopefully she's passed along enough information for me to be able to speak this morning. And I'm currently lead meditation and also teach very introductory level talks at Tse Chen Ling Center. In addition, about 3 years ago, my teacher, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, gave me my practice commitments for my lifetime, one of which was to cast 400,000 Buddhas. Now, this isn't such a strange tradition within the Tibetan Buddhist lineage, but it is still nonetheless a very large number. So I have started, with that practice, I started something called the Sattva Studio. These sacred images are called sattas. Each is cast as part of a meditational ritual. And I started a studio here in San Francisco where similar students like myself can do this practice. And I've been teaching the practice for about a year to other students. And we have a studio that's near San Francisco General Hospital where we teach lead workshops on the actual artistic side of Tibetan Buddhism. I was an artist before, so it was kind of my teacher giving me back something to do with my hands. It's a very grounding practice for those of you who tend to be a little bit all over the place. It helps to focus and ground one. So if you're interested, you can always contact us in that part of it. And during the last half hour, as we're sitting here meditating, I'm thinking of certainly what am I going to talk about. I had first originally thought about talking about the Four Noble Truths. But mostly I think I'd like to start out with talking about mind, because it is the truth of suffering, the truth of the cause of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the path to cessation of suffering. It is really related to the mind and how we're seeing and how we're dealing with our everyday reality. As we were sitting here, I'm sure many of you, your mind was wandering all over the place. It's not an easy thing to keep focused. And it's because of that wandering nature that we have our difficulties, our problems. That's also why we have happiness probably too. But everything, in Tibetan Buddhism, we are taught that everything stems from the mind. All of our ultimate experiences are related to the mind. The mind is the source of everything. How we interpret the world around us. And how to get a sense of this. You wake up and it's a cloudy day and you get depressed. You wake up a sunny day and you feel a little bit uplifted. It's not the external reality that's really what is causing the happiness or the foggy day causing the suffering. It's how your mind's interpreting it. And this is true of everything we do, from our relationships with other people to our work on our job. It's all about the mind and how it's interpreting on a very, very subtle level maybe. But from moment to moment, everything that we do, every experience we have, is created by the mind. And that's where we talk about the true cause of suffering, because it's not reality. It's not the external object that is the source of our suffering. It's not the other person. It's our expectations. It's what we create within our own mind. If that object could give us the satisfaction that we wanted, we would be happy, but it can't. It has to come from within. And this is true of all of our emotions, from the anger, the happiness, the sadness, the joy, the laughter. Everything we experience is caused and comes from the mind. Nothing we experience does not come from the mind. Let's go back to, and how does this relate to the ultimate nature of things? The mind has created conceptually everything that we interpret. You all are looking at me, and because I'm in robes, you're going to interpret one way or the other. And it's based on your mind. It's not me. It's not my robes. But you all are going to have a different perception of who I am and what I'm doing here and what I'm saying, based on your own mind and how you're reacting, and based on past habits and what we call karma. Now, karma's not such a difficult concept, but sometimes we have resistance to it here in the West. It starts to sound like religion. But karma is nothing more than causes and conditions coming into being. That because of your past habits, you're going to see me one way. Because of your past conditions coming into being, you're going to have this experience of me being here in a different manner. Somebody else is going to have a different interpretation. But the ultimate reality of everything we experience is based on karma. It's based on these habits. It's based on coming from our mind. And it's a dynamic process, so we're continually creating even more karma as we go. How to get an example of how this starts, maybe. Think back when you were in first grade. You're learning the alphabet. The teacher writes up on the board the letter, draws a line and another line, and crosses it and tells you that's an A. Before that, you had no concept of what A was. No idea what it was. All of a sudden it appears, and from then on you believe that. And that starts to take on a very solid reality for you. But it's only a concept. It doesn't exist from its own side. It's your mind projecting onto that, those three lines. And that's a start. I mean, if you go back from that A, we build the words, we build the language, we build all of our interpretations. But everything of our experience stems from the same thing. That somehow on these external objects, the colors, the shapes, the sounds, we project things conceptually, that truly they don't exist from their own side in that manner. It's within our interpretation of them. It's our mind that's projecting onto them. And that's true of every experience, all of our relationships. And we have three choices with every experience. We either like it, we dislike it, or we're neutral. We're either going to like it, which can bring attachment, dislike it, which is aversion, causes anger, or we're neutral, which is really ignorance. So we're constantly interpreting everything in that manner. And it's from the mind. It doesn't exist that way from its own side. But we project onto it. So we have this built up over time with our habits. We built up this external reality that doesn't exist the way we see it. The persons in this room, we can just look around. You look at someone, immediately your mind interprets and projects. You might not like their haircut, their body. Something tells you almost immediately, some concept that starts to judge immediately, but ultimately it doesn't exist that way. It's really from your side that you're projecting onto it. Venerable Bruein always talks about the chocolate cake. If the chocolate cake could give us happiness, we could have 10 pieces and we'd be getting happier as each piece went down. But it doesn't. The external object cannot bring us happiness. And it's upon that chocolate cake that we project onto from our side our attachment to it. But after 10 pieces, probably our aversion. So it's from our side. So the chocolate cake in and of itself is not the source of happiness or the source of suffering. It's within our mind. Everything comes from mind. Our whole reality, day to day, every experience, on the job, riding the bus, in traffic, and how you experience that, your source of happiness or suffering is going to be from your mind. It's not the person in the next car that's not going fast enough for you. It's your expectation that they should be doing something different. So every experience we have, and this is what Buddhism is really trying to get at, is try to get to us to work with our minds, to see the ultimate nature of reality, see it as being empty as it is, empty from its own side. What does that mean? It means it doesn't exist without your mental projections on it from its own side. Conventionally, yes, you have a piece of chocolate cake. But inherently, what is that chocolate cake? It's a bunch of flour, sugar, chocolate mixed up, and when you get the sum of the parts together, you label it chocolate cake. It's still from your own side, from your own projections, without the knowledge of, or the label chocolate cake. It's just a bunch of parts, and when you take those parts down, the flour, the sugar, down to the cellular level, it's even more parts. And then ultimately, you don't find it. But the biggest thing here to understand is probably really the nature of mind. That every experience, day to day, the relationships, the job, the friends, the career, the money, the lack of money, how you experience that is based on your mind and how you're interpreting it. And how you're interpreting is going to be based on habit. And that's what karma is about. Karma is about causes and conditions. You have a tendency to get anger when you see someone, so the next time it's there, you're going to get angry again. You tend to get attached in a relationship. It's going to happen again and again until you start seeing it for what it is and checking the mind, becoming aware. And that's what we're trying to do. That's another. In Tibetan Buddhism we have a lot of analytical stuff where we study and contemplate and do analytical meditation on subjects like this, the mind and how we're interpreting. And there's one thing called friend, enemy, stranger. And we can take this with anybody, much like here, sitting here today. You're all going to interpret me sitting here in a different way. But you take, and those are merely labels from your side. But here we take a friend, we take an enemy, we take a stranger, and we start to analyze similarly the fact that it's coming from our mind, these labels. This friend that we have is something we label friend because of what they do for us. This enemy that we label is someone we don't like because they don't do something for us or they hurt us. And a stranger is someone we know but they don't do anything for us, so we just kind of put them off to the side. But these are still labels that we're talking about. They're from our side. From the friend, enemy, stranger. You take those three people. From their side, it doesn't exist like that. The person, the relationship we have let's say we're in a partnership. We see that person one way. Someone else is going to see that person in another way. And even that relationship we have will change. At one moment, they may be a friend because of the relationship we have. In another moment, they're not. It's not the external reality there that's changed so much. It's really how we interpret it. It's coming from our mind. It's all coming from our mind, everything you're experiencing. This is a little bit hard to really get a grasp on of the significance of this, because in our culture, we're so conditioned by reading the newspapers, going every day to place the blame out there, to externalize everything, that as if the external material world is going to make us happy. It can't. There's no way it can. It's our mind that's going to make us happy. And that's what we got to work with. The external reality is going to just keep on going, changing. It's not permanent. Material things are changing from moment to moment. People are changing from moment to moment. So none of this can bring us lasting happiness. So since it is the mind that is the source of whether we're happy or not, that's where we have to start the work. And there are different ways in different traditions to work with the mind, to get an understanding of how to deal with this external reality, these projections that we're putting onto things, how to check the mind, work with the expectations we have with something. There are different tools you can use. There are different meditations you can do. And slowly, slowly you chip away at some of these conceptual fabrications, projections that are created by the mind. And slowly, slowly you may actually become a little bit happier. Okay. I would like to do a short 10-minute meditation on friend, enemy, stranger, if that's okay, and then we'll open it up for questions. Okay, take just a couple minutes to calm the mind down. And then I'll be guiding you through, and you're going to use your own experiences and analyze, question, contemplate. So you're going to imagine 3 people in front of you. The first person is someone you like. Imagine their face very clearly. Let your feelings for this person rise to the surface. Secondly, someone you dislike, who annoys you. Picture them clearly. And the third person is a stranger. Oh, you should picture someone you know. Maybe you see them on the bus, maybe they're at work. But you're pretty indifferent. You don't really care whether they're happy or not. I mean, you might, kind of at a certain level. But you don't really have an established kind of connection there. They're there. But try to come up with a face. You'll keep these three people for this meditation, the same three people. Now let's go back to our friend. Imagine how you want them to be happy. Think of some experiences you've had with them. The laughter, the good times. Just immerse yourself in these good feelings. How you want them to be happy. Think of the things they've done for you to make you happy. You reflect. The basis of this relationship is what they do for you. They fulfill your needs. They make you happy. So therefore, they're a friend. It's natural to want them to be happy. But it's based on what they do for you. Now what about the one that annoys you? Let's go to him or her. Think of those situations. Let those feelings come to the surface. Analyze them. It's based on what they don't or do for you, isn't it? They don't meet your expectations. They do something that hurts you. They get in your way. It's based on you, isn't it? And the stranger. Notice your feelings of indifference. They don't do anything for you. Now imagine a situation where your friend does something to hurt you, causes you to cease being their friend. They really annoy you and hurt you. It's changed. It can change. this good warm feeling you have now can actually change to anger, hurt. Based on what they do for us. And the enemy, the person we dislike. Imagine a situation where just a kind word could change that. Certainly, that person you dislike is liked by at least one other person. Or the stranger. Imagine how an act of kindness, a common interest, could change and shift the relationship. Meeting over a cup of coffee. Or alternatively, that stranger cutting you off in traffic, getting in your way at work, talking about you behind your back. Could change these labels. These labels we have for these three people will change, do change. The friend was once a stranger, to be certain. The enemy was probably a friend. So these are merely labels. It's not reality. From their own side. Take a minute to think of your own happiness. How everything you do, every effort you make, how you just want to be happy, free of suffering. There's nothing stronger in your every action, even in your being here today, is to find that true happiness, to be happy, not to suffer. Just like you, these three people want to be happy. Just like you. In this, we are all the same. Just like you, they want to be happy. Are we sure we may be ignorant on how to be happy? But just like it's in you, this ultimate search for happiness, they too possess this desire to be happy. The friend, the enemy, and the stranger. In this we are all equal. doesn't it make more sense to let go of the labels, the projections from our minds? To want happiness for all beings. May they be happy. Okay. Any questions?
In meditation, I notice today I noticed very strongly this, and I kind of followed it pretty successfully. I've noticed it in the past year, that there's a process in the mind that if you're drifting in meditation to some thought form, as long as you can maintain its life force in that thought, that it's something that your desire is propelling a long time. You go with it. With your mind that naturally fills it in, and it's a source of some pleasure. But eventually, because your mind isn't all powerful, diseases and old age and sickness begin to infect this, and something comes up that isn't so pleasant, that it contradicts what you're saying. And that's the moment when I see the end of that thought form as a source of happiness, and I panic, or there's there's suffering in your sense. And if I have my wits about me, I return immediately to the breath, or to awareness, and allow that to go its way, because the awareness is the source of happiness, which isn't dependent on conditions. So I just wondered if you experienced it that way in anything.
Is your thought that you're sitting with that brings you, is it a material thought?
Well, it could be anything. Let's see, situational, some future hope. I don't know. Some little story I have from that.
Within Tibetan Buddhism, we do have a few very defined ways of trying to come to a blissful state, but also meditations to develop kind of a clear reality of the ultimate nature, so that when you're actually out of meditation, you're seeing things as empty, as more like a dream. They're visually experiencing them, but you're not attaching to them. Kind of what you're talking about with this thought leads me to think that maybe there might be a little attachment. And the mind is probably, if you try to go to a thought like that and to stay with the thought, it's naturally going to kind of break off, because it can't stay on an object of concentration without training. So it's not just the other thought that comes up, but it's that the mind isn't trained to stay with that thought. So in Tibetan Buddhism, there is something called single-pointed concentration, and you try to develop these techniques to stay with an object of concentration, similar to a thought like you might have mentioned, but these are very, very these are practices for people to develop in a very secluded setting, kind of a thing. Nothing very difficult to achieve here. But that, there is stuff like that.
I guess my point is that seems, well, if that meditation you're talking about is intended to enlighten the bodhicitta mind, I guess then it's of some use.
Yes.
Because it's just to amuse yourself or to be in a bliss of, good reason. Perhaps it's not a very good endeavor.
Yeah, you'd have to be careful about that. I mean, first your motivation, but if you get stuck there in that blissful state, you could get stuck there. And it's not ultimate enlightenment. It's not freedom from suffering. You had a question? Okay.
I had a little trouble coming up with an enemy. The friend was easy, but the enemy was tough because I think the minute I started landing on individuals, just the fact that they're never completely enemies, at least in my experience, I mean, it's always just, and so I actually wound up almost kind of manufacturing one for the purpose of the exercise. There was a real person there, but it was the closest I could get to anyone I could really call an enemy. And yet the friend was easy. That was like boom. And I wonder, are there experiences that people have like that, difficulty of coming up with these individuals?
I often choose politicians for my enemy.
So it's using both of my own life,
Also, my experience has been that sometimes one person is all three. The friend, enemy, and stranger. Because of the way, it's about how they relate to you. It's about how they relate to you, so, I mean, you can think about a situation where somebody's hurting you or something like that. Because even your friend is not always going to please you. So it's more about working with that relationship of how you're labeling them immediately upon the basis of what they do for you. Yes?
I often use politicians too, but I've had a problem since the Dalai Lama and Jesse Helms kissed each other. His Holiness.
Well, politicians, I mean, that's the thing. The thing is to develop equanimity and to remember that, they might be ignorant, but somebody likes them somewhere out there. But it is really our expectations, our projections on them that's the cause of the way we see them. It's not.
I think there is a question. That ocean of compassion of His Holiness is able to deal with the enemy.
And we can come up even when you said, think of. It's a little bit generic to come up with a face of someone that cuts you off in traffic or someone annoys you in those kind of situations. But that's when you start checking the mind. That's the real practice when you're out there in the real world. It's not sitting on the cushion. The real practice is really out there in the world and to check the mind. And it's, to be patient. We also very often in here, we expect immediate results. It's our nature of our society just to get, next day delivery. So we're not patient. And we need to be with this stuff. Because the first time you check your mind and stop from doing something, you create the seed for it to be easier the second time. It's like quitting smoking. The more times you do it, eventually you will get there. It's the mind and being resolute about it. But that you need to be patient with it. You're not going to change overnight. You're not going to let go of those expectations overnight. But you can work with it. You really can. And ultimately it will transform you. Just even in a day-to-day world. I still go downtown to work. I still deal with commuting, work situations, much like many of you, I'm sure. So, you got to watch. Keep your mind. And speech is one thing to watch out for a lot. What we do with our speech. How we talk about people. Stuff like that.
just on a more personal note,
Yeah.
You recently became a monk, quite recently.
Yes.
What were some of the, if it's not your personal, what were some of the processes you went through to get there?
Okay. I became ordained about a month ago. When I look back in my life, I had wanted to be a monk since I was about 8 or 10 years old. The only reference I had at that point was Christian, Catholic, actually. I didn't want to be a priest. I knew that for sure, but I was a monk. And then, of course, I experienced life and and almost all different aspects of it. I first asked my teacher, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, about becoming ordained in 1996. And he just laughed. Just started laughing. He said he would send me off to a nunnery, which was probably a safer place for me at the time. But the determination kind of was there. And I mean, I already had been 5 years into Buddhism, but I don't know that I had developed a true sense of renunciation, because it's one of the aspects that you really come to a determination fairly strongly that not that you're renouncing the world as much as that you know that it's not going to give you the sense of pleasure, and so that the sensual things of taste, touch, and sound that you're searching for out there aren't going to make you happy ultimately, so that you start to shut down some of those distractions, shall we say. About a year ago, my teacher, Lama Zopa, we were having dinner. At the end of the dinner, and he kind of was talking about monks, and he turned to me and he says, "Well, how about you?" And I was like, I'd kind of dismissed it since he had laughed at me the first time, and I'd kind of like, yeah, someday I'll get there. But so it made me think about it seriously. And for the last year, I tried to live as a monk on the inside and let it develop that way. Probably the recent changes were a very good strong dose of renunciation, and events just kind of happened very quickly. Lama Zopa again was here in San Francisco, and he was giving and teaching. He turned to me and asked me about becoming a monk, and I said, "Oh yes, before I die, Lama Zopa, you'll take care of me." And he just started laughing again, because death can come at any time, and that was kind of a push to take it on. And then I spoke with, obviously, Geshe-la, who's my teacher at Tse Chen Ling, as well as Rabina. And they felt I was ready, so. But since becoming ordained was kind of, to maybe talk about that just a little bit, is that, this reminds oneself that one is trying to practice, trying to remove oneself from all the sense perceptions, stimuli that come at oneself. It's not that I don't keep looking. It's funny, certainly at the beginning, I'm like, oh, I'm not going to do that for the rest of my life. And I know that there's still some, I can still be drawn to things, that's for sure. Still checking things out. So it's gonna take time. But also being a monk puts a lot of responsibility on being a good monk. Because in our society especially, religion has a certain context, and it's not always very positive, and it's unfortunate. Because in some ways we have to address the spiritual element and dimension within ourselves. At some level we all have to. And it's unfortunate that there is a lot of negativity within religion itself. So it's up to people who are in the spiritual practices to be very good examples of really what it is about. And it's not easy. It won't be easy. I'm not supposed to cross my legs anymore when I'm sitting in a chair. You have certain form to follow. It's not just about the rules. It's about how other people are perceiving you, because obviously, like I said, you guys are all perceiving me differently. Some of you guys are going to be at peace with it. Others, it's going to bother you. I have people coming up to me on the street now. Some people are very shocked. Some people tell me their problems. I'm not so different on the inside. So it must be people's projections. Those are changed more than mine. Okay. Yep. Thank you.
At this point, I'd like to ask for announcements.
Just as an announcement that the singing group is meeting this Wednesday, the 12th, at my house. And those of you who haven't contacted me about it, I've done some phone calls. Could you please let me know if you are going to be there, so I do know how many to expect. Okay, so do get back to me about that. Thank you.
Yes, if anyone needs any information about GDF or how to get on the newsletter list or anything like that, upcoming events, copy. Also, please remember to give generously if you can to the Dharma Bowl outside. We have expenses to run part of the organization. And also, we're looking for help in organizing the summer retreat, which is coming up the weekend after Labor Day weekend. So if anyone is interested in doing that, there's an opportunity there to help out.
Yes, Jim.
Hi, we have just an ongoing project trying to assemble a phone tree and an email list. So there's a sheet out on the table for names and addresses. If you've already done it, you don't need to do it again. So if you haven't, we appreciate getting that information.
Also, the steering committee meeting is this coming Tuesday at Larry White's house at 7:30. And if you're interested in shift somewhere, I can give it to you if you need it. It's in the newsletter, actually.
Jim, does that mean if you're on the mailing list, you don't need to put your name on there, but is this a separate list from the mailing
Well,
list?
for new people, it would be an alternate thing, but if you're, you may be on the mailing list, but we may not have your email address if you have one.
I see. Okay.
Well, actually, yeah, it's kind of a separate list, right? The people who want to be on an email kind of, right?
Well, there's just one sheet of paper. Whoever wants to give us their information is welcome to do it there. Okay. But we are specifically trying to get an email base.
Other announcements? I guess the only other thing I would mention is we still need people who are interested in volunteering to serve as host. We've been around, we'd like to welcome new people and do what David is doing, which is just helping. Please see me or David. And I think that's it. I think
Is
yes.
David also the lunch bunch? Are you in charge of the lunch bunch?
Yes, that'd be turned on. No. Okay. Yeah, we'll do that for sure. So. Just gather around.
In that case, I'll do the dedication of merit. By the merit and the truth of these practices, may all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings know happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings dwell in equanimity, free of too much aversion or attachment.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.